And I think we are now live. Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to our biannual Board of Supporters here at CORE. My name is Mo Ramushu. I am the Communications and Dissemination Specialist here at CORE, and I'm very excited for this afternoon's presentation. We've got a lot in store for you. There are a couple of things that we've learned, and we are going to be implementing them today. So we're quite excited for this one. Slightly different, but let's carry on. So in terms of, I've done all our welcomes and introductions. Again, very excited to have you here. Now, for all our members and those that are starting now or those that are returning, I think it's very important for us to reiterate the role of our board of supporters as part of our overall core community governance. Our core leadership and our management team is sort of guided by a community governance that is linked to our advisory board, which advises us on a lot of strategic direction. This meeting, which is very important to us as you, the board of supporters, to help us identify sort of the requirements and the priorities in our development roadmap, which we'll be sharing with you later on today. We've got the Open University as a stakeholder group, and the Open University assumes overall financial and legal responsibility for CORE's obligations. And then it also provides us with institutional support and resources for us here at CORE. Then we also have our research network representatives that ensures relevance and provides guidance on effectively supporting you, the open research community. We've also got our core leadership and our management team, which have joined us today and will be giving you a couple of presentations. And they're responsible for the day-to-day operations of CORE. They also take operational decisions with guidance from you and all the governance groups that we have. We're very excited today to kind of welcome new members. King's College London, I think if they are in the room, we'd like to welcome you. And we'd like to welcome Buckinghamshire New University as well to the group. We'd like to thank our renewing members because your membership is important to us and it helps us keep this vote moving. And additionally, we would like to thank every other core member that keeps us together and keeps us doing the very important work that we're doing. Now, with our presenters, apart from myself, which I've already introduced, we've got Peter North, who is our founder and head of CORE. Then we've got David Pride, who will be giving you a presentation as well. He's our research associate. And then we've got Matteo Cancelleri, who's our lead developer. So a lot of technological influences and impacts that we'll be receiving from these presenters today. We're going to move on to the next slide. Just as context for today's meeting, we're going to give you core strategic updates in terms of tools and infrastructure, and that presentation will be done by Peter. Then we're going to have the REF and FAIR working group highlights, which David and Matteo will be giving you. If you remember correctly, we've been bombarding your emails, sending you messages around our single session working groups, which might be moving on, but you'll hear all about that later when David and Matteo will be giving you those presentations. Then today we've got something special, as I mentioned earlier. We've got a breakout discussion. So we've got a couple of topics, very interesting, very relevant. We feel like it's very beneficial for us to have those conversations. So we will, in this Teams meeting, be having breakout discussions, and we will tell you about how that's going to happen later on when we break out. We will also be having community feedback and strategic priorities, and David will be giving us that presentation. And then finally, just to close off, we'll be having our closing reflections and next steps that Peter will be giving us. And I think in terms of an introduction, that's me, and I'll be coming back again to just give you further updates at a later stage. And Peter, I think over to you this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Mo, for the introduction, and thank you everybody for coming here and being interested in supporting CORE. So I am here to give you a little bit of a strategic update. I will go through I assume that all of you have received our newsletter, which contains quite a lot of stuff with regards to what we've been working on over the last 6 months. But nevertheless, I feel it's important to go with you through a couple of things that have been updated in CORE and which sort of, especially those areas where you're kind of invited to give feedback. So one thing which I would like to start with is that we have created a new page on CORE which communicates what we call CORE's distinctive characteristics. This page has been created largely to kind of communicate who we are, why are we, in what sense are we different from other scholarly infrastructures, and I think it helps you to see and helps anybody actually to see. It has not been created just for members; it's been created for anybody who is a user of Core to see how Core is positioned within the open scholarly infrastructure ecosystem. So you can see that we've divided this into two areas. One is about scholarly data characteristics. That's effectively what kind of data requirements are guiding what we are doing. And then we have a second part, which is very much about community sustainability and governance characteristics. That is effectively how we do things and what's our approach to them. Some of you might kind of think about how is this related to the principles of open scholarly infrastructure that kind of guide our existence. So what I would say in general is that this is on top of this. This is something extra. This is stuff that is actually not included in the principles of open scholarly infrastructures. We are definitely abiding by those, but this is an extra step which we feel is also important and which we want to tell the world basically. If you have some we would very much welcome if you had the time and had a look at these. You can also, I think this page can be useful if someone within your institution asks you what is Core and what's different about what Core is doing. You can definitely direct them to this page. And if you have any feedback for us with regards to what's written there, how it's phrased, and so on, then we're very happy to incorporate it and or have a discussion about this. The next thing, which I feel is an interesting and important update, is that we've been working over the last 6 months with ForScience on some integrations of Core into DSpace. I might have already introduced this in the previous board of supporters, that basically, the idea that Core should be integrating some functionalities more closely to repository systems has actually emerged from our board of supporters meetings some time ago. And of course, to get things going takes some time. So when we were at the last board of supporters meeting, I probably might have mentioned that we were at that stage in the process of designing how these interactions might actually work. And we have now moved forward, and we have actually started implementing some of these things together with ForScience, or this is so effectively ForScience people are working on this. It's guided by us. It's a cooperation, and it has I will show you a little bit some of those things that are currently being worked on, but it's a fairly broad set of integration opportunities, and we are now prioritizing those which we feel are sort of possible to do and bring some immediate benefits. So those let me actually go to the next slide, because I think it's going to be even clearer, and I'll come back in just a bit. So there are 3 things which I feel are kind of easily demonstrated by this. When you will be in DSpace, it will be possible to select Core as a source, basically, of data. And when an academic will be, or a librarian will be depositing some data into a new paper, it will check whether that paper already exists in Core. It might exist because, for instance, a co-author might have already deposited that paper, or because we are also reading metadata from partner databases. So we are reading metadata, for instance, from arXiv or from Crossref. So it might be that we are already aware of exactly that paper, and in which case the academic will for instance prefill the DOI of the document, and we might be able to pull in the information so that they don't need to spend so much time kind of refilling all of those fields. So that's one aspect which we are working on. The second aspect is what you can see in under number 3. There is this thing called SDG enrichment and RRS enrichment. So SDG stands for Sustainable Development Goals, and RRS stands for Rights Retention Statements. And we are, in both cases, we are extracting these. So Sustainable Development Goals, we are classifying papers in accordance with the United Nations classification using machine learning, and we can then display when a paper is relevant or related to a particular SDG, we can then help display it on the metadata page of the paper. And the same holds for RRS statements. So when we see that the full text contains an RRS statement, it can be extracted and it can then appear on the metadata page of the DSpace repository. One thing which I'd like to mention, we are not necessarily interested only in getting this sort of work done only for DSpace. Of course, we are interested in other repository systems, doing or providing this functionality for other repository systems as well. But the way this works is that we are not experts in, and we cannot be experts in implementing basically and doing something in every repository system in the world. So what we're trying to achieve is that we are partnering with For Science basically for demonstrating whether this is beneficial for the most widely used repository platform. And if this proves to be a really good thing, then we will be looking for ways how this functionality can be potentially integrated in other repository systems by partnering with others. So that's about the integrations. Another important thing, and this is completely new, is that we have been over the last 6 months very active on the Confederation of Open Access Repositories task force for AI bots. This is a new task force which has been launched in response to the growing demand, basically, and need for repositories to get some sort of advice as to how to deal with very highly abusive AI bots. Shall they be blocked? Shall they be allowed? Or something in the middle? The answer is something in the middle. But defining it and finding a good way, best practice way forward is not entirely easy. So the Confederation of Open Access Repositories launched a task force, invited experts from different areas. We are represented basically, or I am representing this community basically on the task force, and we have already created a draft document which is publicly available and which I kind of invite you to go and have a look at. In addition to that, the document the document identified certain activities that can be or should be basically developed, certain tools or certain sort of problem areas for which we need technical solutions in order to support repositories in dealing with abusive AI bots. And we will be, as CORE, giving some presentations in relation to this at 2 upcoming conferences, especially the Confederation of Open Access Repositories annual conference in June, and also FORCE 2026, where we have an accepted talk exactly on this topic. In addition to that, because people sometimes ask us, and we sometimes are really facing, actually not sometimes, on a daily basis, we are facing issues that repositories implement sometimes certain blocking measures for machine access. These blocking measures are often introduced for completely logical reasons. Basically, it's that the repository managers feel that they need to somehow protect the integrity of their systems, and therefore they introduce basically measures to block bots. But very often these measures are not, because it's difficult, they are not always introduced in the right way. And sometimes they block actually even the machine interfaces inside the repository. So what we're seeing, for instance, is that a very popular tool in this space is Cloudflare, which is a tool that detects whether a particular usage is originating from a robot or a human. And we are seeing that these kinds of interfaces are sometimes put in front of, let's say, the OAI PMH interface, which is actually an interface which is intended specifically for the interaction with machines. And that's, of course, not the right way of doing this. So we thought it would be useful and to kind of educate the community and spread awareness a little bit about how these things are or should be ideally handled. We completely understand that you need to protect your systems, but we want to give advice about how to do this in the right way. So in the core data providers guide, we have now a new section on supporting machine access. And we are, in fact, going to have also a related breakout group today, later today, on this topic. Okay, another thing that we newly introduced, and I'm really excited about, but even though there are some people in the team who are even more excited about this, such as Catherine and Mo, is what we call this educational series. We have so far presented and made available 2 chapters of this educational series. There are 2 blocks which were made available. One is taking a closer look on the overview tab in the core dashboard. Another one is on understanding your repository's indexing status in core. The objective of this educational series is to have basically, we understand that core has become a relatively complex system, and we want to educate people so that they are aware of, so that you are aware of all the functionalities that are being provided, and so that you also have an understanding of how they can be used and how they can relate to your actions, basically. And so we will be continuing with this educational series. It's going to address all those areas which I have highlighted basically here on this slide, and what we also understand, and I think this is something that we realized and we consider really important, that there is a certain churn within repository managers. That I was shocked to see that actually about 20% of repository managers kind of rotates on a yearly basis, and we somehow feel that for those people who join our community later, we need to provide sort of guidelines and guidebooks so that they can understand kind of what's available. Otherwise, it can become very confusing. So I would really encourage everybody who is interested in taking part, please do so. And if you have any questions, then please come to us, and don't worry. Don't hesitate. Basically, don't hesitate to get engaged. Don't worry, we will provide any kind of guidance that we can to support you. With that, I'd like to remind you of 2 really important guides that exist. We feel that they are really important. There's the core data providers guide, and there's also the core membership documentation. Both of these are available on the website, and we are doing everything possible to keep these up to date with all ongoing developments. In addition to that, there are also some other documentations like the core API documentation, but I think these 2 guides are particularly relevant for this group. I'm convinced that I also gave you an update on core infrastructure migration 6 months ago, but I was probably saying that why we were doing it, and now I'm pleased to report that 3/4 of the migration have been done, and we're really in we are expecting to be fully operating from within a cloud environment within, I'll say, the next 2 months, basically. So it's going to be relatively soon. This migration has consumed a lot of resources on our side. It has been incredibly important for us from a strategic perspective, because we need to be able to scale the platform. Every year, we need to be able to index more metadata. Repository numbers are also growing. For instance, just over the last 9 months, we have indexed 5 million more full text documents, and I believe that I have seen probably about 30 30 million more metadata records. I might be slightly wrong on this number, but it's in the tens of millions basically, just over 9 months. And this means that there are increasingly, and there's also about an additional 1,000 new repositories basically also in this new in this period of time. So definitely the amount of content is not going to shrink; it's only going to increase, and we need to have an infrastructure that can horizontally scale basically with the demand. I am super excited to also tell you about this development because I think it's strategically really important. This is about a new research project which I am very happy to report we have received at CORE. This is a project which it's a big 9 million euro Horizon Europe grant that is supporting the development of AI research assistants for the research communities in Europe. It's linked to this thing that you might have heard of, which is called European Open Science Cloud. And the idea of the European Open Science Cloud AI assistant is to develop tools that kind of help you to streamline research processes or help researchers to streamline research processes. You might ask what kind of processes? So things like literature reviews or hypothesis generation or things like experimental design, basically. There is a promise, one of the greatest promises of generative AI is actually in exponential growth and streamlining of research. So we are kind of hoping, a lot of people are hoping and promising us that with AI, we are going to see new treatments, for instance, being figured out, basically being discovered earlier than basically we would be able to do so without it. And but of course, there's also no denying that AI brings with itself a lot of problems. So one of these problems are related to, for instance, ethics, responsible use of AI. And I think in our space, basically in the space of research, one of the really big issues with AI, which a lot of people are mentioning, is credit. A lot of people are saying that they are absolutely happy for the content of which comes from research to be digested, used, and supplied and streamlined through AI processes. But at the same time, the real currency for researchers is getting credit and acknowledgement for the work that they have actually done. And so what we are going to do in this project is we're going to try to combine these two areas, developing specific AI assistants, for instance, for doing and supporting systematic reviews, but putting a lot of emphasis also on provenance information, and so that researchers can consume and use AI in their daily work, but that researchers also get credit for how they contributed. So this is about the Horizon Europe grant. CORE gets 1.37 million euros from this, which is a very substantial amount of money. And this resource is going to go towards the research. So as you probably know, our team is not only doing CORE for the purposes of delivering infrastructure, but we are also, some of us are researchers, and and a certain proportion of our team is completely research funded, basically. So this is not for this resource that is available to us is not for the operation of CORE, and we can't use the money for the operation of CORE, but we will use it to develop certain tools with CORE that will hopefully advance our platform and make and strategically advance what we're doing. And one of the last things I want to mention is that there have been effectively two announcements. Already 6 months ago, we have learned about the fact that the IRUS UK tool is going to be decommissioned. And what we have done in this period is that we have surveyed you, we have heard from you that you were interested, or many of you were interested in whether CORE could potentially provide some sort of a replacement for IRUS UK. We have therefore contacted JISC, we spoke with John Kay, at JISC basically, and we are at the moment looking into a potential solution. And one of the breakout groups will be actually dedicated to this specific topic, because we have heard also certain things that with the other solutions that are available are sort of not particularly working for everybody. For instance, we have heard that many institutions would like to see that these usage statistics would be publicly transparent. That means that institutions would be able to see how their usage statistics compare to other institutions, which is, for instance, not available with any existing solution. So we're kind of mapping the space, and we're kind of already on the way of designing something that might be operational. So stay tuned for updates basically in this space. We are still looking into it, and it was very useful for you to help us with the survey to identify that basically, or help us identify that this was something that you wanted us to look into. But the other thing which is important is also that Publications Router is now also being decommissioned. We have built in the past something called a Fresh Finds prototype, and people who will be in that specific breakout group, you can discuss it with the core team basically, and see if that might be actually something that could potentially provide a solution that might substitute or provide even something better than Publications Router, if this is something that you have been using. So these two services, decommissioning is, I think, something that is happening in our environment, and we want to somehow, if we can find a way to support you, we are very interested in doing so. And I think this is my last slide before I invite David and Matteo to give you an update from our working groups. So I wrote this piece basically as part of the newsletter, and effectively what this is about is it's an idea, it's a certain principle. So one of the things that I very strongly believe in is that there should be, like, within repositories, or there should, repositories should provide an authoritative source, or they should be authoritative sources for the scholarly metadata which describe articles that the academics working at those institutions produced. We see, for instance, especially in the United Kingdom, that many repositories are really trying to be very comprehensive. In some other areas of the world, we don't see that happening to that sort of extent. But I think the situation is changing, especially with open access policies. One worrying area, which I also see, and I think other people have informed me about this as well, is a certain centralization of the scholarly metadata, which is happening, and which is happening with actually a significant financial support of many repositories, which basically means that some institutions are investing actually quite a lot of money, in my opinion, to creation of metadata in accordance with proprietary metadata schemas, basically, and actually the metadata then not really belong to them, basically. And I'm questioning whether that's actually the right strategy, and whether we as a community shouldn't focus mostly on making sure that in repositories we really have quality authoritative metadata, because at core, what we want to do is we want to make sure that that there's a level playing field, basically, that any other harvester, any other indexing service should be able to come to repositories and should be able to reference repositories. We strongly believe in this sort of an ecosystem. So we are interested in giving you credit for all those resources that you have, for all the metadata that you have. And we think that that's really important for the resilience of the scholarly communication system. So effectively, the scholarly communication system, we think that it would be a wrong idea to register all metadata in just one or two entities and leave it there. And we question whether that would be a sustainable model. So if you're interested in engaging in this discussion, I would be super happy to talk to you. I'm looking for some sort of engagement which could lead maybe to publishing a paper in this space. But I want to understand what the community thinks as well before I make that step. And with that, I would really like to invite David, who is going to tell us a little bit about a REF working group, which we've run very recently. David, over to you.
Thanks very much, Petter. And perfect. Someone else has control of the slides. Hi, everybody. I suspect many of you who are here have seen me before, and greetings for those of you who haven't. My name's David Pride. I'm a research fellow here at Core. I've been with Petter and the team for about 10 years, and I'm here to talk about everybody's favorite subject, REF. Was 2028 and it's now REF 2029, which is kind of indicative how Research England processes work. For those of you who are or are not aware, there are significant changes for the open access requirements coming up for REF 2029. We have a new page on the Core website that we're keeping updating. We are in regular contact with Research England themselves. Much of the guidance has not actually been the final _2b version has not been finalized, so it is still in a state of flux. And on the back of this, we decided to form what we named the REF working group, to see how much attention we would have and how people wanted us to work and pay attention to this subject with us. And we thought we'd possibly get 4 or 5 people show up to the inaugural meeting of the group, and actually we had 28 people show up, which is fantastic. And I think it shows it's a very, very strong and popular topic, and there are concerns amongst many of you about the best approach that you have and how you can make sure your metadata is exposed in the right way. Petter mentioned the data providers guide. We also have an update for REF in that as well. One of the things that quite clearly came out of the group meeting that we had is the fact that several of you are struggling in terms of the data that is actually exposed by the CRIS system or the repository platform that you're using. WorkTribe in particular was mentioned notably. But one of the things we have here is this community, and I think this is represented in the REF working group, is we have a community of voices, and that community of voices is far stronger together, particularly when working with the vendors. And I see it says here strength in numbers is a very good thing. And I think we have Martin, who's here from Durham, who is one shining example of this. Martin, did you want to say a couple of words if you're here?
I am here, yes.
Martin has joined us. Fantastic. Thank you, Martin. Hello.
Yeah, thanks, David. And yeah, thank you for that. I guess I must apologize. I wasn't actually able to make the first meeting of the working group because I was on holiday, but it's good to hear that it went well. So yes, I'm the repository officer at Durham. We use WorkTribe for both our repository and our CRIS system as well. And last month, myself and one of my colleagues, Matthew Phillips, who I believe is here as well, we had a really productive meeting with David just to discuss how Core can kind of help us out with REF compliance and our metadata, because we have been having issues with kind of Reox and Dublin Core, partly just in general that they're not supported so well, but also because things like deposit dates and online publication data tended not to surface in those formats as well. So we were kind of wondering together if Core being able to scrape metadata directly from our WorkTribe repository might be the kind of best solution. Which it might well be. The kind of issue we found off the back of that is around how WorkTribe as a system interprets deposit dates. Essentially, they at the moment calculate deposit dates based on the date that a repository record is created rather than when a manuscript is actually deposited. So for instance, it's possible for us to create a metadata only record in our repository. And if we then acquire the file that we need at a later date, the deposit date wouldn't actually reflect where we got that file. So it might cause some issues, and it might mean that, it wouldn't necessarily be accurate in terms of calculating REF compliance as well. These are conversations that we have been having with WorkTribe, I think, for quite a while now. And I think, I think kind of having cores backing around this is going to help us out when we have these conversations. There aren't any planned changes around this that I'm aware of at the time of speaking, and it may well be the case that there's a reason that they've kind of interpreted deposit date in this way, but they haven't kind of let us know yet. So yeah, that's where we're at. But
That's Yeah, that's fantastic, Martin. Thank you. That's actually really valuable feedback. Now, there was someone else in the meeting as well, and I won't put them on the spot if they don't want to speak publicly. And they actually have they too are working within WorkTribe, and actually have a contact with the development team at WorkTribe, and are going to have direct conversations there. If that person is here and does want to say something about that, please feel free to. And if you don't, that's absolutely fine. The plan for the working group going forward is for us to meet every 6 months, but I think there will be communications between the members, like, as I say, between myself and Martin, and we can meet with other members as well, and we're more than happy to meet with members to talk with this. And the group will meet sort of officially every 6 months. We will continue to revise the documentation we have. We will continue to talk with Research England, and we will continue to feed back that information. And thank you again, finally, and I'll hand over to everybody who came along to the REF working group, and we really hope that the collective voices together can make a difference. And at this point, I'd like to hand over to Matteo.
Sorry, David, just 1 second. I would actually like to slightly add one thing to what you've just said. I think that there has been one thing that for me has been absolutely wonderful to see in that working group was the realization that there was, in my opinion, a very broad support for REOX version 3 in as a solution basically to the exposition or surfacing deposit dates basically from our infrastructure. We agreed, I think, as a group that REOX version 3 was a good way forward, and we talked basically about the fact that there are of course, for some platforms like DSpace, the plugin already exists, but for some other platforms, a plugin for REOX version 3 would still need to be developed, and how it could basically be, we were completely honest, of course, again, that it's not core that can, of course, do this, because we are not, developers of WorkTribe basically, or these kinds of repository systems, but we were talking about the mechanisms this group can use to, let's say, encourage the repository systems or repository platforms to adopt this kind of a standard. So for me, it was very important to see this sort of broad support and understanding. And maybe one last thing I wanted to mention, and then I will hand over to Matteo, was that we just want you to be aware that at Core we have now a new page for which basically describes what we expect from repository systems or what we would recommend repository systems to do to make sure that they are kind of REF 2029 ready. What work that is needed from a technical perspective in order for us to be able to see the deposit dates in a machine readable way. And so again, we are inviting you to kind of come look at that page. Tell us if you think that this is working. Tell us also if you think that it's not working, because we're happy to adapt it. And with that, Matteo, I'm inviting you to give an update on the FAIR group.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. So this side, on the other working group that we ran very recently, is about something that we've been working for a while. So it all started a couple of years ago now, when we had a little project with the USRN, so the US Repository Network, on looking into like repositories and doing a pilot on understanding how we can put in shape, if you can say, the repositories in US. And from there, also a part of that went into looking into something that they call the desirable characteristics for repositories. There is an interesting document that describes a list of characteristics that are desirable characteristics for US repositories. But when we looked at them, we realized that these characteristics are fairly generic, and it could be applied across a whole range of repositories in practically everywhere. So we started thinking, okay, can we do this into a more generic, and can we do this into something that we can check how repositories are being fair or apply to FAIR principles? So, FAIR is now the new term for this, but it's about how repositories are reacting to the various aspects of being fair. How do they share the data? How do they share the metadata and things like that? So we created something called the FAIR repository certification, where we created something where we half automated, half manually, we can provide an assessment of how the repository is sharing the data. It's similar to other products that maybe are done more for data repositories, but also we have, our flair to it, and we're proud of something where we mix data and we mix under the experience that we have on assessing a repository on how it looks outside from the outside. And this was the first working group. So this is one of the many products that the tools or features that we do that work on with co-designing it. So what we're trying to do is that we build a working group with our members, and in the working group we present our ideas, but our ideas are open for discussion, are open for changes, and we want to address all of the pain points and all the possible things that are in the mind of the repository managers, because of course we always look at it from the perspective of an aggregator, but there's way more to see from the perspective of a repository manager. So we sit together, we have our working groups, and we discuss it in many different ways. So on this working group especially, yes, you can go next slide, Peter, please. On this working group especially, there was quite a lot of discussion in very simple things, even like what does it mean to be fair? That is a massive thing to discuss on how do we deal with these things. Maybe I'll invite now, we selected one person that was active on the working group. There were others as well, but we have someone just to be our representative to see what was their experience for the working group. So if Jason is around, I think he is. Jason, if you want to join in a second and tell us how do you find the working group, what do you think, and what do we take it? Jason is from University of Oxford, and I know he also has other projects that work about assessing FAIR from different perspectives as well. So it was a very good contribution in the working group. So Jason, are you around? Are you able to speak?
Sure.
Yes.
Thanks,
Hello.
Matteo. Yeah, well, it was a great first session to understand kind of what you're thinking with this product, with this plugin, if you like. And yeah, I think you've summarized quite nicely there the fact that it's hard to determine how we precisely measure fair. Fair don't give an absolute, this is what the boxes you must tick to be fair as a repository or as a piece of fair content. I think it was good that we were able to distinguish that this would be how prepared a repository would be to support fair. I think that's probably a fair way of saying it, or how active a repository currently is in having the right mechanisms available to meet what we determine to be the kind of fair aspects. I think what was important to me, certainly in the working group, is how this relates to other activities that repositories might be involved in, things like the Core Trust Seal, which we spoke about, because a lot of the underpinning values are the same in that regard. Certainly there was a bit of focus on things like, again, REOX and the OAA PMH, how we share things through API. So yeah, I'd be interested to see how this develops, and certainly I think from a Oxford perspective, it'd be great to be involved. I think the other bit of caution, it was probably just around what other people are doing in this space and how it can kind of be joined up and work together so that repositories don't end up having to have kind of different sets of criteria to meet the same thing, if that makes sense. So yeah, it'd be great to see how this evolves further.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are, as in Jason and the team at Oxford University, we had do a meeting for discussing exactly this, because there are quite a few overlaps on the work that they've been doing and our work. So I think, yes, I'll send you some calendar invite after this. And Peter, you wanted to join in, so you are muted.
Thank you so much, Matteo, and thank you so much, Jason. I just wanted to mention that what we are doing, or what we are going to do over the next 6 months, is that we are going to have a couple of pilot institutions, or we're inviting a few pilot sustaining institutions to have a pilot with us on the to test effectively the FAIR certification module, which we have already built. So this is a tool that automatically checks your repository with regards to certain technical characteristics, which we consider to be indicative of the fairness of your repository. And we're also still in the period of sort of consultation with people to some extent about what it means for a repository to be fair, because of course we're testing certain things. We're testing interoperability basically to a large degree, and how well placed your repository is with regards to those points, and we're presenting it as part of this module, which will be available within the core repository dashboard in a way that enables the repository manager to react to this basically, and take certain make certain interventions, hopefully not too difficult interventions, that significantly improve on the situation. So this is what FAIR certification it is. If you're excited about this, if you find it interesting, then let us know, and we can potentially place you in the pilot. If you just want to follow this, that's also absolutely fine. We are very likely to tell you more about this in the next Board of Supporters meeting. And with that, I'm excited to hand over to Mo, who is going to introduce us to our breakout discussions.
Absolutely. Thank you to all the presenters so far. I think these were incredibly impactful presentations that we have. And I kind of feel sorry for those people that aren't really members of CORE, because I think it really shows you how impactful the information that we've delivered today. Having said that, we're now about to get to the most exciting phase of the day, I hope. I think the 3 rooms that you see there in front of you have kind of like a competition amongst them to see how much engagement we're actually going to get in these rooms. Now, we've got 3 breakaway rooms. How it's going to work is that you are going to be automatically assigned to a particular room. And we're obviously doing that to avoid perhaps David and Catherine having all the members join them, or for Matteo and Victoria to absolutely have no one in their session. So we are going to absolutely split it automatically. It's going to be automated. There will be mini presentations in there, but this is your time as members of CORE to kind of join in, engage, and have these conversations. Now, as you can see, room 1 is around the challenges to repository services in these uncertain times. So you'll be having Victoria and Matteo, as you see there. Victoria will be leading that. Matteo will be there as, you know, the representative for Victoria, just to give extra backing. And then room 2, you've got myself and you've got Peter. And we will be discussing repository management in the age of AI. I think this is a buzzword. Peter's already given some summaries, so we'll be going into detail there. Then exciting as well, you've got room 3, you've got David, Pride, and Catherine, who will be discussing all emerging needs from the community, from you, the community. So I guess this is time for all of us to kind of break away. We've got our incredible Victoria, who's working as a magician in the background to kind of start splitting us to the groups. Please feel free to engage. We will then take a roundup of those conversations. The groups are automated for like 20 minutes for the discussion, and then we post the discussion, we'll come back and then we'll have sort of a summary of what has been discussed from the 3 facilitators, or 6 facilitators rather, that you'll be having in the session. So I hope you are as excited as I am. Victoria, I think I'm ready. For all the facilitators, do you mind turning on your cameras so that the people can see who you are? Maybe let's just give them a wave before we start while Victoria is just getting everything ready. Thanks, David, Matteo. Hi, Catherine. Victoria, let's go.
So
Peter,
I'm opening the
thanks.
groups.
Let's go. Okay, so we're excited about this. I guess it's a first, and hopefully it'll be one of many. So let's get going, and we'll see you in the breakaway rooms. Thank you.
So Mo, are you going to ask
I think
people
everyone's back.
Yeah, I'm just waiting. It would be great, Peter, if you can share the presentation again, and then we can go to the slide where we were at, and then I'll take it from there. But it's nice to see faces. It's absolutely amazing now. Don't switch them off. Caroline, I saw you switching off your camera. You were just on. And I'm picking on you because your screen just came on just now. Here we go. Thanks, Martin, for coming back on the screen. See, it's nice to see faces. Okay. While we wait for Peter, I think as a trial run, this really went great. I don't know about anyone else. It's okay, Caroline. I was just pulling your leg there. It's all right. I think as a session, it was really, really amazing. Yes, Matteo, you're very correct. Time really, really went really quickly. We had a little bit of a tech issue because Peter joined us a little bit later, but we brought him into the conversation once we had started moving. I think what I'm going to do is I will give about a minute or so to each of our sort of facilitators from the rooms to kind of just give us a roundup. And the only reason we're doing this is because obviously there were different conversations happening in different rooms. And as an entire group, we would kind of just like to get a summary of what was being discussed. And with a lot of bias, I must say that ours must have been one of the most engaging and very interesting conversations that we just had. So I'd like to hand over to either Victoria or Matteo. I'm not sure who's giving feedback from you guys' side, but feel free to jump in and I'll mute.
Yeah, I had a plan to say who's gonna speak, who's going to report about our breakout room, but time finished, so I will report about the breakout room. So yes, we discussed on our breakout room was about the challenges that repository community have during these uncertain times. It's always uncertain times in some sort of ways, but this feels quite proper because there's been, as Peter mentioned earlier as well, some changes where services that we've been relying for a long time, like Iris UK and Publication Router, are both be announced to be dismissed quite suddenly. And what we understood is that there are challenges. They suggested replacements are not quite the same and not quite adequate to do this. So we discussed through what we are thinking to do as core, because on both sides we are on one side we are needing to do something that is about tracking downloads, because that's something that we were relying on Iris UK. Iris UK is going. Of course, OpenAir for us is not really working because we're not a repository, so we need to find a solution for that. On the other side, we had something that we were working on called FreshFind that we kind of put it aside because we feel like we need a bit more enthusiasm to run it. And then now it seems like that the enthusiasm could be there because Publication Router is going, and that's a space for these kind of things. Quite a few good suggestions about the fact that the need for Publication Router is not just about finding papers, for example, but it's about finding papers with full text. And that's a place that there's quite a big gap. And also there are quite a few issues about on Iris side, where the features that are more interesting is also finding like history. So there's quite a big worry about having gaps. And that's something that we might or might not able to cover that. That's something that we need to look into, but I took notes and try to explore further what we can do on these kind of things to see if we can protect these kind of gaps, because of course it seems like that the OpenAir solution is not achieving exactly the same. So the big danger is that this traffic and this tracking will stop, and then it will take some time before we get something back. So these are kind of the worries that were raised, and we will look into and continue talking with these people. That's it.
Thanks, Matteo. That sounded very, very impactful. Peter, you wanted to say something mid-conversation while Matteo was
I just
going.
wanted to say something very quickly, which is in relation to the tool that Matteo mentioned. It's a prototype that we've built, but it has never been productionized yet. It's called FreshFinds. It's basically a tool that helps you it extracts affiliations from any papers that we encounter anywhere in the world, basically. And then when we see that the paper exists, we can check whether that paper exists in a repository. And if it doesn't exist in a repository, we can notify the repository that maybe this is a paper which was produced by their academics, which they would like to insert in their repository, which makes this very close to what Publication Router provided. So effectively, to some extent, we are also asking ourselves, does it make sense for us to finalize FreshFinds and make this now available to the repositories community? So that's the question we're asking ourselves.
Okay, thanks for that, Peter. Now we'll save the best for last. So what I'll do is I'll give David and Catherine the opportunity to then just give their feedback. I think obviously because we've just heard enough from Peter at the moment, so I'll give him an opportunity to come back and present. So let's go, David and Catherine. Over to you.
Greetings, thanks, Mo. Like Matteo, we discovered we had far less time than we thought we were going to. And sorry to Lucy for cutting you off mid flow. We were having a really interesting discussion around lots of things there. What came out largely about our group in terms of like emerging needs is that a lot of these aren't necessarily emerging. Date confusion. The dates recorded by the publisher is different from the date that's given to the author, which is different from the date that is recorded in the repository system. So this is causing a lot of problems and a lot of confusions. Several people have been using the OA switchboard. Many people have been using, and we know this from other groups as well, many of the people have been using GIST Publication Router, and there's a lot of interest in around how Core can actually step in and offer a replacement for this, which Petter has just been discussing in the form of FreshFinds. And there was one other thing, post-deposit checks, making sure you get your academics and authors to deposit on time seems to be a very, very common interest, and we didn't get time to take our conversation much beyond that. So thank you to those that were in our group. We had a really nice, really active discussion there, so thank you all for taking part. And at this point I'll hand to Petter, I think.
And thank you very much, David. But I was wondering, and sorry for putting you on the spot, but George, you were very active in our group. Would you be happy to summarize it? And if not, then I can do it, but I think you would be very well placed to do it.
All right, okay. Well, thanks for the invitation, Peter. I mean, we were discussing what some of the common techniques that were being used by repositories to tackle abusive bots, and as you can imagine, there's a wide variety of mechanisms that are used. So you know, at our institution, it's a mix of whack-a-mole. So, you know, blocking various abusive IP addresses where we can confirm that they're abusive, rate limiting, experimentation with web application firewalls. But as I explained to the group at our institution, the particular open source solution that we're experimenting with has not been completely effective, and our infrastructure colleagues are not particularly satisfied with it. Colleague from Cambridge was also talking about some of the techniques that they were using, some of which were similar. But I think ultimately the conclusion was, and I think this was your conclusion, Petter, that ultimately there is no one, you know, remedy to this particular problem. Institutions have to support a number of strategies to mitigate the impact of abusive bots, or bad bots as we're calling them these days, bad bots. I feel like we discussed a lot more, Petter, but I've kind of run out of steam now. Is there something else that we discussed we should mention?
Just one thing to mention. For me, it was very interesting to hear that you also thought that doing some sort of a community thing like whitelisting or blacklisting would be actually a logical step forward. Yeah. And we also talked about the fact that sometimes blacklisting is not a clear cut, that sometimes there is there might be a little bit of a scale, and you were surprised, if I remember correctly, George, that it hasn't happened already, basically. So yes. I think that was good to hear. Yeah, that's all from us. Well.
Thanks, Petter, for keeping it short for a change. I think at this point, we're going to now do our community feedback and strategic priorities. I think with that, it's going to go to David. So yeah, I think we're just going to hand over to David. David, do you want to take over?
Greetings. Thanks again, Mo. Just back to me very briefly. This is going to be quite quick. Can someone move the slide on to the next slide, please? Does somebody have control? Perfect. Yes, thank you. And this is a game where we're going to ask for your participation. One of the things that you may have noticed has been missing from this board of supporters, sadly missing from the board of supporters, is us reporting back on the biannual survey that we usually run in the lead up to this, and it kind of informs not only this meeting, but it informs our entire roadmap for the next 6 months. We sent the survey out, and we genuinely have to think that it's potentially one of two reasons. I'm going to cover both. Number one is Easter. I don't think our timing was great. So first off, we have had responses, and we've had some really good detailed responses from some of you, which is great. But as I say, because we do use this, so thank you to those who have responded. But we haven't heard from enough of you. We really, really do need to hear from you, from as many as possible, from as many institutions as possible. So if someone's from your institution has already filled it in, please do let us know, or sorry, please do fill it in as well. We're more than happy to hear multiple voices, and genuinely, we do listen. Some of the feedback that you've heard around the REF working group and the PER certification group came directly from comments from the last survey when we asked you what you'd like to see us working on. So please do scan the QR code if you got it on the phone, visit the web form. We're going to keep it open for another week or so to give you as many of you as much chance as possible to feed it in, and we will then generate a report and we will feed back to everybody on the results of the survey this time round. Thank you, Mo. And just to let you know, we have a question from Lucy.
Hi, yeah, sorry, thanks, David. I've just been reminded about that survey. I'm not a Google Chrome user, so I think that was a blocker for me for trying to get to answer the survey. Are there any other means of just getting the questions out?
It should work in either Edge or Safari as well. It shouldn't be Chrome. The survey itself is a Google form, but it shouldn't be Chrome dependent. I can certainly pick it up with you offline after the meeting, and I'm happy to send you the questions directly actually, because we're more than happy to listen to you.
Great. I just don't want to log in on a Google account to answer surveys. That's all. So if there's a way I can do it without logging in through a Google account, I'll do it. Just point me in the right direction.
Absolutely, you shouldn't have to log into anything. You should just be able to visit the page. But I will drop you a list. One of the other reasons we thought that we'd have a lower response than this time is because we do have new members as well. Is if you can take a look at the addresses on the screen, if you ever hear from us, this is where you will hear from us from. These are the emailing addresses. You'll notice we use core.science and core.ac.uk. So please do add these email addresses to your email whitelist so we can ensure that you are receiving all of the communications from us. That's about updates, it's about your membership, and it's about things like the survey as well. So thank you very much indeed. And at this point, I will hand you back over to Mo.
Okay, and thank you very much. And I just want to mention, it might be that really many of you might not be receiving our communications via these mailing lists. So we would encourage you, if you could go actually to your spam folders and potentially check whether you have any email from supporting members at core.science or sustaining members at core.science. We really use these mailing lists and we depend on them, and we kind of expect that these emails will reach you. And if they are not, then that's not great. So thank you. I have now the opportunity to close this meeting, basically. So I just want to remind you of a few things which were mentioned, but just to make sure that everybody is aware of them. So please stay tuned for the educational series. Take part in it if you feel that you can benefit. Check the REF 2029 recommendations page, which is available on the website. Feel free to engage with us basically about this. It tells you what, how to prepare your repository for REF 2029. Of course, this is only relevant to UK repositories, so apologies to those who are not from the UK and visiting us today. This is indeed, like domain specific. There is also this new page, course distinctive characteristics. This could be particularly relevant if you need to communicate to people within your organizations about what core is. We are inviting sustaining members to the FAIR pilot, which is going to take place over the next 6 months. So if you want your repository to be checked for following best practices, feel free to drop us an email and we'll include you. And the survey was mentioned. Once we have David will give information about how long the survey will stay open, but we will then we will send you a report basically. So we are not reporting today, but we will send you a report by email. And that's it. Thank you so much for your engagement. If there's 1 or 2 questions, then we're happy to answer it before the meeting closes.
We've just had a couple of people note in the channel that unfortunately, apologies, the QR code wasn't working for the link for the survey, but Victoria has actually put the text link directly in the chat. So if you can use that instead, and apologies that the QR code wasn't working. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. So unless there are any questions, then we're very happy to have had you, and have a wonderful day. And thank you so much for staying with us. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye now.